Just like to discuss the events as we know them thus far, by starting out by giving our deepest condolences to the family of Jahkoby Smith, who was 21 years old at the tragic time of his death. He was murdered, as we know, at a wake being held at the West End Sailboat Club in the early hours of Saturday evening, the 29th of July. My colleague, Detective Chief Inspector Naima Aswad, will be able to provide you details about the investigation and our efforts and requests on that in a few minutes, but I'd like to address the public on a few issues that have arisen as a result of this sad event. As I stated already, a funeral was being held for Mr. Jahkoby Francis this past Saturday, whom investigators believed was murdered by a rival gang faction on Wednesday, the 19th of July this year. The wake was set for that evening, with friends and family attending the West End Sailboat Club in Somerset to give him a send-off. Whilst I cannot give specifics, the Bermuda Police Service did put in place both waterborne and roadside measures to monitor and deter rival factions from attending the West End Sailboat Club to give him that send-off. Investigations lead us to believe that the death of Mr. Smith was as a result of antisocial behavior by persons at the wake, fueled by alcohol and/or other items, possibly including drugs. This behavior escalated into a full melee, with weapons being drawn and Mr. Smith and another man being stabbed, and Mr. Smith tragically losing his life. I would like to reassure the community that whilst this was indeed a senseless death, this event was not a retaliatory event that occurred as a result of the death of Mr. Francis. It is our understanding that the persons involved in the death of Mr. Smith and Mr. Smith himself were associates and friends of the deceased Mr. Francis. The Bermuda Police Service works tirelessly to both prevent and detect crimes of this nature, and we are working with the family and the community to reduce tensions and to catch and convict those persons in our community who are causing the most harm. I'll take questions at the end if there's any questions around this, and I'll hand over to my colleague, Mrs. Aswad, who will update you on the investigation.
Good afternoon. About 7:15 p.m. on Saturday, the 29th of July, police received several 911 calls from members of the public who were at the West End Sailboat Club, where there was a wake being held for the late murder victim, Jahkoby Francis. Police and first responders were dispatched to the scene where the victim, Jahkoby Smith, was being tended to by persons in the area. Police officers rendered first aid until the arrival of EMT personnel, who later conveyed Mr. Smith to the King Edward Memorial Hospital. Unfortunately, he was later pronounced dead as a result of his injuries. There also was an additional male that was injured at the same location. We are aware that he was taken to the King Edward Memorial Hospital as well, where he was treated for his injuries and later released. As a result of the above incidents, the Bermuda Police Service has launched both a murder and a wounding investigation. At this time, one male has been arrested in connection with the murder and wounding, and inquiries are currently still underway. At this time, we are making another appeal for any witnesses in the area, persons who have attended the wake and/or were traveling in the area at the time. We are asking for any piece of information that you may have, no matter if you think it's been forwarded to the police already. We are seeking the assistance of all members of our community to help us to solve this senseless murder.
Yes, this would be directed questions to whoever leading the investigation. So to clarify, one person has been arrested both in connection with the wounding and with the murder investigation?
Yes.
Are there any additional suspects that are being sought?
At this time, we have open lines of inquiry still pending, and we do have information coming in. So at this time, we would like to thank the members of the public who have contacted the police. As we said, the investigation is still underway. We are still waiting for more information to come in, and we're still pursuing other lines of inquiry. So right now, that is the one person that we have.
To clarify, this is something that looked like there was no premeditation on what the investigation thus far has suggested is that these were two acquaintances or friends who were at the same event and some kind of interaction occurred?
I don't want to speak to his premeditation, but from all accounts and purposes, this doesn't appear to be anything retaliatory by any gang member at this point.
Okay.
Jasper Patterson, Bermuda Broadcasting. Have people at the wake, those who witnessed the melee, as you described it, have they been forthcoming with information?
Pleasingly, a lot of people have come forward, but as you can imagine, there were several people at the wake at that time, and it's important that we hear from as many people as possible. We want to get it right. We want to progress this investigation, and that's why we're making this appeal today.
And is there a reason that you haven't named the other stabbing victim?
Yeah, we typically don't name victims of crime. Typically, on the circumstances when there's a deceased.
Can you get into one weapon, multiple weapons? Were the weapons just knives?
At this point, we just have it as a stabbing incident. Whether it's multiple weapons or more, we're still looking into that.
The suspect, the gentleman, or I should say the person who was arrested, were they arrested at the scene or later on?
A later one.
Do you know how they got away from the scene? Did they get on a motorcycle? Did they?
Well, we're asking members of the public to help us with that.
Okay.
If you had boats and police officers watching the scene, how did this escalate so quickly?
Yeah, I can answer that, Brian. This, you can appreciate we're not policing individual events. We had measures in place to ensure that or to prevent a retaliatory event. As I indicated in my initial remarks, we believe the early stages of the investigation lead us to believe that this was an event that transpired within the wake event itself. So that's very difficult to budget for in terms of a policing plan. So a spontaneous event within the wake. Yeah, but like I said, we did take measures to prevent the retaliatory aspect of it, and that's what happened.
Were there any police officers on the premises at the time?
No, there were not.
What leads you to suspect that drugs and alcohol was the cause of this? Or?
We're currently assessing reports that that alcohol was being consumed in the church and at the graveside and at the wake, and that we're currently receiving lines of information that indicate that that may have been a factor. So this is an aspect of it that we're looking at. It's a difficult one again for the police to get involved in. I suspect that's probably going to lie. That conversation is going to lie elsewhere, not with the police. But we certainly believe that that was possibly a contributing factor in terms of what transpired.
Any other questions?
Just it might be outside of your scope, if so I apologize. I understand there was a meeting today between the minister and the police commissioner. I'm just wondering if that meeting's had a chance to...
Clearly that's outside of the realm of what we can speak to at this point.
Okay, fair enough.
And just to confirm, the two victims were friends of Jahkoby Francis?
They attended the wake. We would assume that they were friends of Jahkoby Francis.